Chevre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong and happy physically and spiritually. Today is Erev Shabbos Kodesh Pashas Tzav, Shabbos HaGodel, and Sunday, Mirza Hashem Ubez, Hashem Yisbarach, is Yud Alef Nissan, the Rebbe's Yom Heledes. So we have to speak about the connections of Pashas Tzav, the Rebbe, and Shabbos HaGodel. So we'll start as usual with a pasuk from the Rebbe's new kapitel, the first pasuk, and that will tell us what the focus is today. The lesson of the week. Shir Amaylos LeDavid, Samachti B'Imrim Li, Beis Adinoi Nelech. A song of the steps by David. I rejoice when they say to me, we shall go to the house of Hashem. Which basically you could say that this is also al derech the pasuk Achashalti Meis Hashem Shifti Beveis Hashem Kol Yemei Chayai. What's my request in life? What am I focused on? Where do I look at? What am I looking forward to? What makes me tick? Beis Hashem Nelech. That we're going soon to the house of Hashem. Over here, obviously, we're talking about the Beis HaMikdash, and Kapitel Kocha Beis is about the Beis HaMikdash and Yerushalayim, etc., etc. In any case, the idea is Shir HaMaylos, and we spoke many times that a song of ascent, going higher. Today we are going to speak about this idea of always striving for higher. And we'll also connect it to Pesach. Since my name is Baruch Kuli Yemen, and this coming week is also going to be Pesach, so we're now going to connect Parshas Tzav, the Rebbe's Yom Heledes, and Chag Pesach. So, we're also going to talk about what makes great leaders. Obviously, when we talk about the Rebbe is an unparalleled leader, and there's some unique quality that leaders have, tzaddikim have, rabbeim have. And we've spoken about this many times, similar to what it says about Yeshua, Ish Asheru Arboi, a man of the spirit, Sheyichalalich Neged Ruchoi Shal Kol Echad V'Echad. So number one, it means he connects and he relates to every single individual as an individual. That's number one. But number two, really, it means not only that he's able to connect, but to the person that he's connecting with, the Rebbe, the leader, his message, his lessons are relevant. And it's relevant to every single person, to whatever level they're holding at, which is quite amazing. In other words, we're dealing with principles, we're dealing with values, that whoever you are, it demands from you to grow. Which means also, like they say, that true leaders bring a person to where they would have never been able to come to on their own. But on the other hand, where they reach is truly the maximizing of their own potential, i.e., they bring out their true self. All of the followers, all of the Hasidim, of the true leaders, of the true Manhigim, the ones that are Rosh B'nai Yisrael, they were able to bring out to the max and develop everyone's full potential, which meant they made everyone become all that they were meant to become. And this is what we're going to speak about today, how we find this message or lessons, which I find very, very inspiring, that it relates to all, no matter where you're holding. So let's take one, for example. I'm going to say a couple of different sichas. First, this is a sicha in Chele Gimel in Parshas Tzav, which is right away in the beginning of the sicha, where it says concerning Tzav Ha'arim is bon of Leimer Zois Teiras Ha'ila Hi Ha'ila Al Meikta Al Mizbeach Kol Ha'layla Ad HaBoker. So it says this is the law of the Oila offering. It is the Oila offering that stays on the flame on the Mizbeach all night until the morning. And here Rashi says, Zois Teiras Ha'ila Hareinyan Hazeh Bo L'Lamed. Since it says over here that it's Kol HaLayla, this teaches us Al Hekter Chlov Ve'Varim, about the burning of fats and body parts, Shehei Kosher, that it should be valid Kol HaLayla, all night. So it's very interesting that even though this pasuk says, I'll make the al-mizbeach kol halayla ad ha-boker, that's really not milchatchila. Really the time to bring the carbon is by day. But it's also kosher if it's done by night. And this is unusual, that in the deraisa, I mean it's not the only thing, but in the deraisa, that is a milchatchila and b'diavad. And the Rambam, in Hilchas Ma'aseh HaKarbonos in Perek Daled, actually says la halacha, af al pi shemuter lahaktir emurim ve'evorim b'layla, even though it's permissible to bring this by night, ein ma'achanes on ladas, you shouldn't do this in the first place, like b'kavona, ela mishtadlin lahaktir hakol b'yom, you should endeavor to do it by day. Chaviva mitzvah b'shaita. The real beauty of the mitzvah is when it's done in its right time, which he means by yom. It could also be done by night. So the question is, what lesson is there in Avodas Hashem? Obviously, as the Ramban speaks about the idea of a korban, that a person is supposed to imagine that whatever's happening to the korban is really happening to himself. And we spoke already many times in this series of the shiurim, how everything that was going on in the Mishkan has a spiritual counterpart on many levels. The whole wording of the pasuk V'asuli Migdash V'shachanti B'Seicham, and I will dwell in them and not in it, means that the person in himself mirrors, has a corresponding inner significance in the service of Hashem to everything that was happening in the Mikdash and the Mishkan, and that's why the message of those mitzvahs are relevant today. So what's the lesson of Avodas Hashem about this hekter chlovim that can be by day or by night? So the Sikha in Chelik Gimel, the Rebbe speaks that day and night represents two levels of service in Avodas Hashem. Every person has a part of himself which is night and a part of himself which is day. And that's what it means actually, like when we say to Neilach Beis Hashem, that's your day part. But when you're involved in Rishus and mundane worldly things, that's your night part. And that's the difference. But first, let's understand that when we say Hekter Chlovim, there's two parts to it. There's a negative, taking away the negative part of Hekter Chlovim, which has the connotation where we give it away, which means we don't have any fats. And then there's the other thing where we have it, but we channel it. Giving it away doesn't mean that we don't have it, and we just gave it up to Hashem. In other words, like annihilated it, got rid of it, or it means that it becomes channeled to the service of Hashem. Let's go back for a second. Why is chelev? What does chelev mean? The fats goes on tainug. Tainug is your pleasure principle, your pleasure drive. How is fats connected to tainug? Because the fats represents the choices, the best. What's the most important, deepest part of your personality, or even of your nefesh bahamis, or in general? Your koyach hatainug, your pleasure drive. In a way, I don't want to elaborate on this now, everything you're doing, in a way, you could call it, to understand it better, everything is about the quality of life, which means your pleasure. One person's quality of life is this, and one person's quality of life is that. But what's behind it all? What's the quality of life? This is what you enjoy, and that's what this person enjoys. And as a matter of fact, the idea of fat is physically connected to pleasure. As you all know, the famous Gemara, where the emperor, this general, was notified that he was made emperor, and he couldn't take off his footwear, his sandal from his foot. And I think it was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai who told him that Shmua Toiva Tedashin Otzem. When you hear good tidings, which means something that touched a very, very deep level of pleasure, Shmua Toiva, good news, but good news that caused the release, it triggered, it stimulated, it aroused the most deepest, intense level of pleasure. Shmua Toiva, Tedashin Otzem, caused that the bone should become fat. So therefore, he couldn't put on or take off his sandal from a minute ago, from before he heard the news, to a minute later, because his foot actually became thicker. So that's what it means. We see when a person receives a great feeling of pleasure, his body expands, so to speak. That's how powerful the idea of pleasure is. And that's the connection between tainug and chelev. Chelev means fat. Fat means you're expanding. There's a broadness. There's a fatness. You become fatter from pleasure. So now, let's go back to what we said before. There's one aspect of chelev lavaya where we have to get rid of negative fat, so to speak, i.e., our enjoyment of mundane things. Then there's where we have to channel the fat, make it good fat, where we use our pleasure, our gishmak, in the right things. So in other words, get rid of your gishmak in bad things and channel your gishmak in good things. Similar to there's a famous sikh of the Rebbe about dam and tzardea. Dam means get excited about the right things. And tzardea means cool down, relax, become cold and indifferent to things that you are now excited about that you shouldn't be excited about. So now let's get back to the sikh over here. Night and day. The night part of you is your involvement in your shus, eating, sleeping, business, etc. So the truth is, the Jew has to realize and come to an awareness and a consciousness that what am I all about? What's the main part of me? My Jewishness, my neshama. And really, I don't know what I'm doing here in Elam Hazeh. The truth is, my neshama naturally is not connected to the physical. Its natural habitat is not eating steak or having anything to do with the physical. So therefore, really, I don't have a gishmak in it. I shouldn't have a gishmak in it, because that's not what I'm about. Any gishmak that I'm having, any pleasure I'm having from physical things is coming from my animal soul, because the animal soul is connected to physicality and materialism. But my spirituality, my spiritual delight, comes from spirituality and from things that are holy. So therefore, when it comes to night, my physical things, I understand, it's obvious. What am I, an animal? If I'm only here to eat, sleep, and drink, and other physical things, then there's no difference between man and beast. We're both the same. So therefore, obviously, when it comes to the physical, I know that if I'm enjoying it, it's not really something which is godly, or something which is exalted or noble. So therefore, when it comes to night, chelev l'Hashem is something that we don't have to focus on. That's like easy peasy shmeezy. So therefore, the main avoid of hektik lovin was not by night, because that's the easy part. The question comes as follows: when a person's learning and davening, and his day activities, day with the goodness shines through, it's illuminating, it's bright. So there you might think, if you enjoy it, chelev l'Hashem, there's no problem. But here's the catch. When it comes to davening and learning, to make sure that it's actually chelev l'Hashem, that it's l'shma, that's already a high avodah. That already takes hard work. And that's something that demands more concentration, more focus, and more time, so to speak. Why? Because the person can always tell himself, what's so bad? Even if it's shaloi lishma. But meanwhile, I'm learning, I'm davening, I'm doing a mitzvah. These are things that are the natural habitat of my godly soul. So what's so terrible if it won't be lishma? And as the Rebbe brings over here an amazing example, you have to look it up. That means, and he brings an example like a nafkimina la'alacha, so to speak. A person can learn Torah, and he enjoys his pilpul, his understanding, his chidush. So if it's going to be about his enjoyment and his chidush, the things that he came up with, that makes him feel good, so sometimes there might be a contradiction to other Yishayim or other Mefarshim, he'll say it's about his enjoyment. And that's going to be a very big problem. But if when he's learning Torah and he's doing a mitzvah, it's not about his enjoyment, it's about chelev l'Hashem, that even the enjoyment that he has in the learning is because the Eibishter wants him to have an enjoyment for whatever reason, like we spoke many times, in order that the whole person should be involved. So that's something that a person has to always check his baggage. Like we say, examine your motives. This idea of serving Hashem where you're totally, constantly examining your motives, that it shouldn't be ulterior motives, that's a much harder Aveda. And therefore, the main mitzvah of Hekter Chlovim is by the day things. In other words, this is where the main focus is, because it's the harder thing, and therefore it demands more Aveda. See over there, Chele Gimel. So what's beautiful about it? That the Rebbe takes the mitzvah and he explains this idea how something has to be for Hashem, either in this part of the day or in that part of the day, but it's always applicable. Chelev LaHashem. Now let's take another example from this Pasha, which we spoke already about before. It's one of my favorite sichas in Lekutei Sichas, that Lekutei Sichas Chelik Alef. We're going to say it over briefly because we already spoke about this many times. Eish Tamid Tukal HaMizbeach Loi Sichba. Later on, in one of the first couple of psukim in the Pasha, it says the fire should burn always on the altar. Eish Tamid Tukal HaMizbeach, constantly. And the Rebbe brings from Yerushalmi that says Afilu B'tumah, Afilu B'Shabbos, Afilu B'Shabbos, Afilu B'tumah. We light this altar even on Shabbos, and even it seems like when the kohen is impure. So the Rebbe learns Pshat. What does it mean, Afilu B'Shabbos? Afilu B'Shabbos means, Shabbos means Aliyah So'elamis. We're dealing with the elite, the spiritual elite, the intellectuals. Those are those people that are exalted. They are deeply meditative individuals, deep scholars, mystics. So he might think, what does Eish mean? Eish means a fire, a passion. So the scholar walks into the synagogue, or when it comes to Simchas Torah, let's say, and he sees people that are rambunctious and rowdy and dancing, and their faces are getting red. And he says to himself, you know what? That's their self-expression for Hashem in a good way. So because they have no other outlet in connecting to Hashem, so they use it, they channel it through dancing and through exuberant joy, and they're on fire. But me, the scholar, I connect to Hashem through learning, and therefore I don't need to ignite the fire of dancing and to get too emotional and excited, because I'm anyways connected, and I'm connected even on a deeper level through the intellect, because the intellect, mind, moyach, is higher than heart. So therefore the Rebbe says, this is the lesson of Eish Tamid Tukal Afilu B'Shabbos. Even if you're a Shabbos Jew, you're the intellectual, you're the deep mystic, even you have to be on fire. And what does it mean, Afilu B'Tumah? We have another sort of Jew. He's impure. He did every Aveir in the book. He's in the mud. He's teeth in the blotter. He's deep drowning in it, in the quicksand. And he thinks to himself, what connection do I have to holiness? What connection do I have to spirituality? How can I get excited about this? I know where I was last night. I know what I did yesterday. Who am I kidding? I should get excited about this. And the answer is, your true you is your excitement about this. And every Jew has a neshama, he has a spark, like the pilot flame. That's always there. So guess what? Take that pilot, that spark, and ignite it. And that's what it means, that no matter we may roam, you could always come back home. And mayim rabim leyuchlu lechabis es ha'ava. That fire, that spark that you have can never be extinguished. But now we want you to fan the flame. Take that small spark and make it a fiery flame. And that's the message. So we're talking to the highest of the high. He has to get excited and be on fire. A chassid is a shtick fire. And even the lowest of the low, he also has that message. You're not lost. You're not far gone. Take that spark that's there no matter what, and now make it a meidedika fire flame. So that's another example in this week's parasha, how just like we have by Hekter Chlovim, we have the day part of you and the night part of you, and the night part of you is lower, and the day part of you is higher, and there's a different meaning behind the avoid in each one. The same thing we see by Eish Tamid Tukal HaMizbeach Lo Yisirbe. And now let's go to Pesach and Yetzias Mitzrayim. There's a sikh from the Rebbe, I think it was Alef Nissan, Tavshem Mem Daled, where the Rebbe spoke a sikha about that we find something very interesting about Yetzias Mitzrayim. I don't know if I spoke about this yet before, that there's one pasuk where it says that when did the shibud end? Vayihi b'chatzi halayla. That was the total final. Shibud started, the real slavery started, was way before that. But when is like the end of the end, with this finished with any sort of dominion of the Egyptians over the Jews? In other words, the last Makkah, and it says Vayihi b'chatzi halayla, when there's Makkah's b'cheres, and right after that it says that Parei vayikra l'Moshe l'Aaron, and he says Kumu tzu miteich ami u'luchu ivdas Hashem. And when does that happen? B'chatzi halayla, midnight. And then 12 hours later, it seems, Vayihi be'etzam hayom hazeh yotzu kol tzivos Hashem me'eretz Mitzrayim. And then it says it was midday, and they went out of Mitzrayim. So the Rebbe asks, why is it so significant that in each case it says the exact moment, like it says Vayihi b'chatzi halayla, and then be'etzam hayom hazeh? Why is it so important that it should say the exact time? So on the words Vayihi be'etzam hayom hazeh, Rashi says, Magid shekivin she'egia ketz le'ikban hakol mokim keref ayin. So with the blink of an eye, since it came the exact moment, the exact second, that's when they were redeemed, not a second before. So that teaches you obviously a lesson, that when the time comes, then you'll be redeemed immediately. And that's important to know, because sometimes you can be in a situation in life where you're in a situation of limitations in a prison. You have to realize Yeshua's Hashem keref ayin, as they say. Hashem's salvation can come within a second. There can be a complete reversal. But now let's talk about an Avodas Hashem. The Rebbe gives a tremendous lesson. What does it mean b'chatzi halayla? And what does it mean be'etzam hayom? It was the best of times and the worst of times. Each one, whatever situation you find yourself in the worst of times and the darkest of the dark, that's what it means b'chatzi halayla. When it's the worst of times, sometimes people are in situations in life where they don't see a way out. I've experienced such moments. The Rebbe should help that no one should experience such moments, where you feel all four walls closing in on you. From all sides, things are crashing, things are falling. And it's the darkest of the dark, the bleakest of the bleak, the lowest of the lowest. Comes the message that even at that very moment, which also means in Avodas Hashem, I was talking physical situations in life, in areas of Bani Chaya Mezoni, but the same thing is in Ruchnis. You could have a Jew. I've read stories of Jews that were about to convert, and they were in the cloister, Rahman al-San. And at that very moment, before they were ready to convert and get married, they just ran away. It's not made up stories. I know some of these people, that they were gurus for years, and they left everything, they abandoned Judaism, and they had a journey to the bottom of the center of the earth, like they say. Journeys that you cannot imagine, that only a Jew, a nefesh alikis with special koiches, could end up in such journeys. And they're going further and further and further away, it seems. And guess what? They also have to know, b'chatzi halayla, no matter where you are, no matter how dark it is, no matter how thick is the darkness, no matter how low you are, you can break out of that. Yetzias Mitzrayim. You have the ability to break out of that, to transcend that limitation. There's no such a thing as no hope. You have the ability. You've been empowered to be able to break out of the greatest imprisonment. That's what it means b'chatzi halayla, the lowest of the low. Then comes the be'etzam hayom hazeh. The chatzi halayla is the worst of times. Be'etzam hayom hazeh is the best of times. You can have a person, he's a baki b'shas, he's a tzaddik, he's a oved elikim, And he's amazing. He worked on himself till he reached a point that the things that bother most people or are temptations for most people is not even an issue for him. So he might think to himself, okay, it's enough, I can become complacent. So we say, no, you also have to break out. You have to break out of habit. Any level of habit, or you've thought you've reached your limits, that's not good. Yetzias Mitzrayim, breaking out of Egypt, means that you have to break out of even the best of times and make it better. Like the Rebbe Marash used to say, as gut is besser and besser. And this is something that's so amazing. We get back to Alef Nissan and the Rebbe. For whatever reason, we see by many people that the stress is about feel-good Judaism. We used to say feel-good Judaism by people that are into picking and choosing. We're not going to get into that now. But it seems like right now, wherever you look, it seems like everybody's into feel-good Judaism. Relax, take it easy, etc., etc. You shouldn't have too much stress or anxiety. But we see from the Rebbe's message the opposite. Shabbos HaGodel. You want to be the best that you can be. You know what's really going to make you happy? When you're going to break free of any limitations that you have. If you're a truly healthy person, you're not getting anxiety and stress and tension from challenges to grow. Just like we see by any champion, any champions, any winners, they tell themselves, we're not setting the standard according to others. And you see these champions, first of all, how much they work on themselves to beat whatever the previous record was. And it's so inspiring. And it's the same thing with the Rebbe. I think I could safely say that the Rebbe has never let me down, not in a letter and not in a video, where the Rebbe always stresses the concept of striving for higher. So you could think to yourself, with today's, certain people have this perspective, why is the Rebbe doing it? He's just going to make the person feel like he has a load on his head. It's going to bring him down. And the answer is, on the contrary. The Rebbe is the ultimate coach that knows how to bring out your best. And the truth is, you know yourself that nothing's going to make you feel better and more proud of yourself when you achieve something where you're able to transcend your limitations. And I know this from students. I know this from myself. I'll give you an example. I used to write emails, long emails, and I wanted to get it out to my students, and I wanted to get it out before Shabbos. And I knew it's going to have to be miyut chelbi v'domi. It's a blank canvas. And it's now a Wednesday night, and it's going to take me I don't know how many hours. I'm going to have to sleep less, and they don't call deadlines for nothing. Your kishkis are going to be turning over. But then if you make that deadline, Baruch Hashem, you give a shevu v'idol HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that you're able to do it, and it's going to be a message that's going to bring benefit to others. And Baruch Hashem, you could be proud of something that helps another person. But at the same time, you know the truth, that only, like they say in English, if not for the last minute, many things would never happen. So we have to take it all in the positive sense. Like we say, cherish criticism, for it will stand you on great heights. So this is all the connection between Shabbos Parshas Tzav, and where we have both from the mitzvah of Hekter Chlovim, that it's Balayla or Bayim, two different sorts of Aveda by the person. One, that part of him which is the night, which is involved in materialism, and day, the part of him which is involved in holiness. And in either case, there's an aspect of Hekter Chlovim, as we spoke before, Barichas, and so too, Eish Tamid Tukalam Mizbeach, whether we're talking to the highest, the scholars, mystics, deep thinkers, or that's Afilu B'Shabbos, or Afilu B'Tumah, whether we're talking to someone who finds himself in a low circumstance. The same thing is over here. Yetzias Mitzrayim, what does it mean a person is able to break out? You could break out of wherever you're holding in the worst of times, that's B'chatzeis Halayla, or in the best of times, Be'etzem HaYom Hazeh. And like I said before, this is what's so amazing about the Rebbe. And for Yud Alef Nissan, a birthday is a Mazoli Goiver. We're going to the next level. It's a new year, new energies, new koiches. And as they say in English, go big or go home. Make big resolutions. Shabbos HaGodol. It's the great Shabbos. And this Shabbos we're given great empowerment to be able to accomplish great things. And the Eibusher should help that if we make a resolution to accomplish great things with the koiches of Yud Alef Nissan, Shabbos HaGodol will bring us to the K'mei Tzeis Chomeres Messiah. Arenu Flois will come to the greatest HaGodol of the Geula Mitzvah Shlema. Take it from Miyad Mamish. Posting from my home in Melbourne, Be'ez Hashem Yisborech. Posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisborech, your man in Melbourne.